Non-metallic metal, hereafter referred to as NMM. I might just call it non-metallic metal, it's much easier to say. This is the false effect that gives the impression of seeing a metallic surface. For this, I've used the same gold recipe that you can see up in the right hand corner under the assistant. There's a few changes to my regular recipe, my favourite being a scrofulous, so scrofulous brown. It sounds way better in Spanish. To begin the painting process, I add a base layer of, for the most part, scrofulous brown plus Rhinox hide. The Rhinox hide gives a greater coverage on the black base coat, whereas scrofulous brown is the pigmentation. It's that warm gold that I want. Now, gold, non-metallic, is a huge subject with many different moving parts. If you do want, well, there'll be a PDF guide accompanying this. If you do want to go into greater depth and understanding of how light reflections work, please refer to the Dawn PDF tutorial and Sanguinius's PDF tutorial. In fact, those two series offer a wealth of information alongside this. But for the most part, this gold I want to create is a warm, saturated gold. And I contrast this with the lemon yellow. Now, when we talk about golds, when we talk about cool and warm golds, what the hell do we actually mean by that? Well, when you look at yellow, it starts to stray into the cool spectrum of things. Yellow is a warm colour, but it does stray into the green, into the colder areas. So we can say that some yellows are colder or warmer than others. If we pigment them with orange and red, they become warmer. If we pigment them instead with more of a green, we can call them lemon yellow. For the most part, I use scrofulous brown, Rhinox hide, and cavalry brown for intermediary shades on the non-metallic metal. And this is contrasted with lemon yellow, which does have a pinch of green in there. The first initial layers are all done via wet blending. So even though the paints are very thin, they aren't so thin that they bleed out. We need roughly, and again I can only speak to my own experience living in this country and this humidity and the temperature, we need roughly 2 parts water to 1 part paint. When we add it to the surface of the miniature, it does seep out slightly, but it retains the pigmentation. We do not want to add it so much that it seeps out everywhere and we're left with tide marks. Now, once this is dry, we can go forward with this procedure where we are adding very definitive lines. Adding very definitive lines to non-metallic metal is the key to success, in my opinion, with this technique. More and more you are starting to see artists experimenting by leaving very strong brushstrokes on top of the miniatures. It's not a case of over-engineering, of blending things into oblivion. No, we do want to see those transitions. And when viewed very closely, they can look a little awkward. But if you look at any artwork with your nose pressed against it, you can see the brushstrokes, you can see the awkwardness in the shifting of the tone. It doesn't make it any less of a masterpiece by doing so. Cavalry brown, you'll notice that it's on the screen at the moment past the wings. It has more of a reddish hue to it. It looks more like a red leather. Now we are using this to reflect the magma and hellfire glow from beneath. The golds will be infused with a warmer, reddier tone and hue, and we'll also spike that with some... Oh, it's not on the gold, damn. I have to change that graphic. Anyway, that's a little insight into my life. With hot orange. Oh no, it is there. Oh good, I don't need to change that graphic. Excellent, that saved me 20 minutes of my life. The pigmentation of the shadows where you'd normally associate darker, cooler hues to contrast with the warm hues in the mid-tone. Instead, we're flipping that on its head. Practically what... I'm very aware when I spout these terms, it sounds a bit like white noise, that I say these terms again and again and again in relation to the video, sure, but I'm aware that you normally have these videos on when you're painting and you may not be paying attention to every single brushstroke, and that's fine, that's what it's there for. Listen to my lilting Welsh voice as I lull you to sleep, or hopefully lull you into being a better painter. So what exactly do those terms mean? Let's break them down in a bit more of a simpler vernacular. God, I sound like a prig there. Okay. When we highlight a miniature, when we highlight a simple shape, take a cylinder, for example. We shade the base of the cylinder, and we have a highlight run into the top. It's a very simple top-down highlight. In the notebook section, we can see the comparison in a non-metallic surface in comparison to one lit from below with hellfire. So we have the fleur-de-lis, in the case of the notebook, on the left of the notebook, where you can see the shadows are in contrast. The primary light source is the top left, and you can see it hitting the surface, blending out, and then developing those ripples of light. In comparison, we have my doctored version on the right, which has a lot more red, dark red, orange red, saturated orange tones in the shadow. Why is that? Well, the primary light source exists below the miniature. It's shining up. Now, when we come to do this with our own miniature painting, it's very easy to become confused and lost. Where the hell do we even begin? Just as we talk about in the non-metallic PDF tutorials with Sanguinius, we need to break every single surface down into simpler shapes. The fleur-de-lis, for example, we can see the tulip head of the middle strand. If we take that in isolation and we plot the point of light coming directly from above to below, you can see the concentric circles of light it creates, developing into a brown, then a darker brown. That's all we need to do with that surface. We've isolated the image, we've isolated the volumes of the miniature, and we've developed them. My version to the right of that, it takes it a step further in that we introduce a secondary, well, the light's coming from below. That's our primary light source. That's where we want the miniature to be built around. The secondary light source comes from above, which has more cooler hues associated with it. So we need to flip the shadow and highlighting sequence on its head, because the light comes from below, not above. So we have, even though it's the primary light source from below, what colours do you associate with flame, with hellfire? What colours are physically on the base? We have oranges, reds, yellows. So the reflection points on the metallic work needs to reflect golds, it needs to reflect yellows, oranges, reds. And then we construct the mid-tone and shadow around that. Even though our primary light source comes from below, it's not a very intense, high-value light. By high value, I mean it doesn't have a lot of white in that strong highlight. Instead, when you look at fire, I mean, if you've ever had a fire in your home, not something rampaging through your home, like if you have a fire pit in your home, I'm not suggesting you set fire to your home for this exercise. Please don't have any legal action against me for that sentence. Please don't light your house on fire. Go outside, light your neighbour's house on fire. No, don't do that. If you've ever seen a campsite, if you've ever seen a movie, there you go, you can keep it nice and safe. If you've ever seen a movie and they have set up a campfire, everything around them, everywhere that the light hits, has a really nice warm ambient glow. Oranges, the colours of autumn, orange, yellow, deep russety reds. We want this reflected in the gold work itself. Gold, a metallic object, will reflect more of the ambient surroundings, just as the blade reflects more of the ambient surroundings, just as the metallic work that we'll be doing on Celestine will reflect more ambience around her. I hope that's not too confusing. I hope your head isn't spinning after. I hope it's clear enough. If you've listened to me ramble on and you have questions, I hope you have questions, because it means that you're engaged with the subject and there's something that doesn't quite fit right with you. Please be in contact. Please get in touch with me. I need this kind of feedback loop to make sure that the information needed is included in the video, and then you're getting a better user experience out of this. So please never feel afraid to contact me. That's what I'm here for. And it doesn't have to be about this project in particular. It could be about anything that you're painting at the time. You pay for this resource, use it. I am here to help you. Okay, back to the video. I want some very striking reflection points on her chest armor. So we are using pure lemon yellow, undiluted at the tip of the blade, tip of the brush, and I'm dotting it in those surfaces that would catch the most amount of light. Okay, for this exercise, we are concentrating on the shoulder pad. Scrofulous brown is used as a base coat, and then I've added some hot orange to create the ambient glow. You'll notice the outer side of the wings will catch more of that hellish glow from underneath, and we'll have more orange on that portion. It will develop into a dark rhinox hide and be brought back up into a Japanese uniform, as we can see here from Vallejo. My brush strokes at this stage are quite sketchy. The paint itself is layering consistency of paint. There's a tiny amount of moisture in there, but only for it to slip off the brush. My brush stroke itself affects the underlying tones. It gives the impression that I want it to. Okay, this brush, and you can see the brush isn't in the best condition. It's not a new brush. The hairs are starting to splay out at the ends. Okay, let's add a pinch of ivory to add a specular highlight. Specular highlight being that pure dot of white that gives the impression of more of a reflective surrounding. Then I use scrofulous brown mixed with Japanese uniform 50/50 to glaze over the top to modulate it. Okay, let's have a look at a bit more of we've worked on some very complex objects here, very complex small objects, and we're about to do it one more time as well. So same process, same paints. Ivory is added to the surface of the miniature, top of the halo. And once it's been added, I can take the blade of the brush to smooth it into the surroundings. The technique I'm using here is a layering technique. The paint is near enough as it comes out of the bottle. The only moisture is in the brush itself to allow it to slip from the brush onto the miniature. But the brush stroke itself determines where the tones sit in relation to one another. Okay, pinches of ivory to add specular highlights. The halo hasn't been developed that far at this point. I'm going a couple of stages ahead at this point. I want to see what the finished result looks like, or to help me with the blends continuing forward. Okay, scrofulous brown plus hot orange is added into the undertone to pick up on the ambient light. Now we're using a pinch more Japanese uniform. You can see how I'm gliding that across the surface. Okay, a bit more Japanese uniform. And then pure ivory. You can see the tones haven't really been blended that much. I want to give this paint job granularity. I want to give this piece granularity to the flow of the metal. I want my brush strokes to indicate maybe slight damage. Very, very minor scratches to the metalwork. Okay, a few specular highlights are added here and there so I can see the final product before I go back and glaze it with exactly the same process. Working from scrofulous brown, rhinox hide, adding pinches of cavalry brown, especially the areas that pick up on that ambient light from below. A nice way of putting it is instead of adding black to create the shadows, we instead add cavalry brown. Okay, for the steel itself, Eclipse Grey is added on the top layer and hot orange below. Then with a few pinches of ice yellow for a stronger reflection. Again, we are using a layering consistency of paint. I'm dragging the brush across the surface so it's just sitting on the top of the sculpt. I'm not trying to add it in between the layers. And by adding the highlight at the top, we give that non-metallic feel with the orange coming from below, so it goes light, dark, light. And that's it. Thank you so much for watching the non-metallic video. I hope you've got a lot from it. I'll see you in the next video. Thank you very much. Bye-bye. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.